Alright guys, today I'm going to talk about tech minimalism and why you should incorporate it more in your life, especially as we get deeper into the future. So first things first, the definition of tech minimalism isn't exactly how I see tech minimalism in a functional sense. Admittedly, my definition coincides more with digital minimalism, but it takes aspects from both, and fundamentally, tech minimalism starts with digital minimalism. So what do I call tech minimalism? It's when you use simpler tools to accomplish your daily tasks at the loss of convenience. See, here's the deal. I've noticed that there is a trend of software cropping up that leads to a certain task becoming more convenient. It makes sense for all of history's inventions. Man has tried to innovate ways to make a certain task easier. When farmers till a field, they don't use a hoe anymore, they use a tractor. Gone are the days of a hand drill. When a carpenter needs to make a hole, they simply just use a cordless drill. Innovation in this regard applies to software as well. Back in the day, computing required a bit more of a savvy user than it does now, and I get it. People who may not have the skills with a computer still have a genuine need to use a computer. People like machinists using CAM, artists using Krita, but the thing is, what about the tools that people use that aren't really hard to do the manual way? A lot of this software is proprietary, but a lot more of the simple tools are also proprietary. What I'm getting at is that some of these simpler tools are ones you don't really need. You can start to see where I'm coming from at this angle. It's more of against proprietary software, but the thing is that most proprietary software indeed does do data collection. Even if they themselves don't perform malicious functions, data collection without consent is still a malicious function, whether or not what they intend to do with it is malicious, and that's a problem. Keep in mind that I take a simple approach to determining what a tool is. I see a tool as something that allows you to do something that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do unassisted, or at least makes a menial task faster and easier. ls is a tool to see your file directories, r is a tool to archive files, but there are things that are indeed tools that you wouldn't think of as such. Take, for instance, social media. Social media is a tool that allows you to communicate to the entire world, which is similar to the concept of a forum, but different rather in that it categorizes by posts on your wall instead of by threads. Admittedly, I myself am not a fan of social media because I don't think it is a productive use of your time and can lead to mental insecurities in an individual, but that isn't the point I'm trying to make here. The thing is, proprietary social media serves primarily as a data aggregation tool to mass collect user data. Oftentimes they will do this to try and sell you things, which will often pop up the more you scroll. This is what makes that company money by selling ad space to retailers. I will say that the methods they do this are really creepy by scraping not only your publicly known data, but any data you input on the site in general, including private data such as private posts, private messages, and even those too if they are quote-unquote deleted, as nothing is truly deleted on the internet. They will sell this data to anyone who offers to buy it, which alone is already a bad thing as there are no real checks to who is buying the data, but they also tend to poorly secure this data as well. Think about all of the big social media hacks that have happened in like the last 5 to 10 years. There are alternative forms of social media you can use, such as Mastodon, which if choosing the right server can lead to something like this never happening to you while still getting a pretty good social media experience. My rant doesn't end with social media, of course. It kind of just serves as a warm-up to my next part, which is ultimately even more important, your operating system. It is no secret that Microsoft Windows and Apple's Mac OS do data collection on their users, but what if I told you that just because you tick off the data collection, it doesn't mean that you aren't still broadcasting telemetry to the servers? Try this if you have VM software installed. Install a fresh copy of Windows 11, run no programs, and keep an eye on the network output in Task Manager. Now try doing the tasks that will require no internet to achieve. Try opening a file manager, open some text files. Why is it sending data out? They're collecting data on your system about your files. They can see everything. The old search bar isn't even a thing anymore on Windows, it's connected via internet. The age-old meme is that Windows and macOS are operating systems used because they are often more convenient compared to open source equivalents such as Linux. But the thing is, Linux isn't really all that complicated. See, you have varying levels of difficulty in using Linux because we have the different distributions. Sure, if you want to learn more about Linux and really do things yourself, you can install a distro like Arch, Gentoo, or the derivatives such as Artix and Funtoo. But the thing is, many of the distros out there are set up to do work the second you install them, with very little setup. This is in part due to most distros out there having spins, which is basically the distro being shipped with a different desktop environment installed, and you don't even have to reinstall your distro to change these. You can just change it in the package manager. Now, I won't lie to you, on Linux you will face some problems as you'll be learning to use a new operating system that doesn't really act like Windows, though somewhat similar to Mac OS. You will face the same difficulties as you did when you first learned how to use whatever operating system you used before, but Linux does not collect your data without your consent, and in fact, Linux does not collect your data at all unless provided by either your distro or your software maintainer, which is always optional and never a default. Now, I know that I'm a free software advocate, but the message I preach through my channel isn't inherently one about free software, whether or not I think it's superior, which I do, but rather one that is based in one's digital privacy and security. You know that there are some proprietary applications I use. For instance, I use FL Studio and Wine. I run Traktor Pro to use one of my DJ controllers, which unfortunately only works in Traktor due to the nature of the motorized jog wheels, which I don't even use. They were working on a mix mapping for it and it never went through because it's just too hard for them to figure out the motorized jog wheels, unfortunately. Steam is a proprietary application. Spotify is a proprietary application that I rarely use. I'm a functionalist at the end of the day. I love free software, and I think free software is the best kind of software there is because not only the freedoms that it gives users and programmers, but at the end of the day, free software is secure. But I will tell you this, it doesn't matter how secure your software is if the operating system that you run bare metal on your machine isn't secure.